Nowadays, many people want to become hackers. Throughout their learning journey, their excitement suddenly drops when they start to learn about methodologies, Linux, web infrastructure, networks, generally the very fundamental stuff you need to know. Hello everyone, I'm Costa, welcome to VulnHub Academy. Today's video is part of our series Learn to Hack with Linux, where we're going to be studying how to hack web applications. If you have missed our first episode where we studied Linux commands, you can find the video in that corner or in the description below. So let's begin. So when talking about web applications, we're really talking about an interface that is basically responsible for visualizing the very functionalities that are hard-coded somewhere on a server. Let's say that we're currently looking at Facebook or YouTube, it doesn't matter. It's a web application. So we want to go to the home page of that web application. We click a button and then we basically send a request towards a server, and that request is requesting for some resources, right? The server accepts that request and returns a response towards our client, which is ourselves. And within that response is basically the resources that are required by us. So to summarize, a web application allows us to dynamically interact with an interface that allows us to request certain resources and basically use some functionalities that make our life easier. For example, if you want to chat with friends, if you want to see a video, if you want to transfer some funds somewhere, generally useful stuff. So we as attackers, generally speaking, want to find ways to either break those functionalities, or we want to find ways to manipulate those functionalities to generally do something that they're not intended to do. Let's say that we have a shopping cart and we're basically checking out from the web application. What if we can actually lower the price of the products that we are buying? You know, that's quite interesting, and it's possible in some cases where specific vulnerability exists. The reason I'm saying that is we as attackers are trying to circumvent certain security controls. As ethical hackers, of course, we're not doing it maliciously, we're doing to protect that data. We're doing it to not to steal the data, we're doing it to make that application safer, more secure, and generally increase its security posture. The correct way to achieve a successful operation is through the use of methodology. Why? Because methodology allows us to go step by step through the whole process of hacking application, because application is not just one simple dynamic interface. It's a complex environment that includes a lot of files, a lot of code, a lot of interaction, a lot of functionalities. It is really difficult to remember what did you test yesterday. It is very difficult to plan how you're going to approach certain tests without the methodology, because it's really hard to keep track of what you did and what you did not do. The very beginning of a hack is basically enumeration. You want to understand the application. You cannot really hack something if you don't understand it, if you don't know how it works, why it works that way, if you don't know where are the attack vectors, if you don't know where possible weaknesses could be located, you know. So without that essential information, we cannot really achieve our end goal, which is hacking the application. Just to make it a little bit more understandable, I have found on Google a picture. I must say that each one of those steps within that methodology is really big in itself, and it deserves its own right to have a complete video made about it. So I'm not really gonna dive really deep into the methodology part. I'm just going to explain a little bit about each of those steps. So we start by setting a target, right? We set a scope for testing. We know what's our target. Let's say website A. We visit that website A and we use specific tools to enumerate and spider that go through crawl. In other words, crawl the application, look for entry points, look for attack vectors like comment fields, URI, variables, logging fields, authorization and authentication functionalities, generally stuff that may allow us to attack the application. Then we conduct vulnerability scanning, which is essentially going through those functionalities, looking what type of software has been used, what type of platform has been used, what's the version of those software. Because if the software is outdated, let's say the last update of the software was like 2015, there might be a good chance that we can find public exploits available for that specific software, no matter what it is. It's not a given, but it's possible. So by doing the vulnerability scanning part, we ensure that we can find vulnerable software which might allow us to exploit it. During the vulnerability scanning, we also have like active reconnaissance. I like to call it active enumeration. During the active enumeration part, we poke the application. After we have identified in the previous step all the entry points, all the functionalities and all that, during the vulnerability scanning or the active enumeration phase, we're going to be poking those functionalities and entry points and all that. We're going to be playing around, attacking the application with specific injections, which we will be learning about in the future videos. Some of those that I can mention are like SQL injections, cross-site scripting, HTML injections, XML injections, and all that. Quite interesting stuff, guys. So after we play around the application, we might find decent vulnerabilities, and the next step is, after finding those vulnerabilities or thinking about finding certain weaknesses, we should think and plan about how we can exploit those vulnerabilities, how we can concatenate in a way certain weaknesses where one weakness in itself doesn't make vulnerability, but if we have, let's say, 3 weaknesses that are located in a particular place, like we have 3 weaknesses during the registration process, if they're used together, then they make a vulnerability. As we can see on this specific screenshot, the next step is covering tracks and maintaining access. Usually that is part of the process in specific engagements, but most of the time we don't really do that. At least it's not that necessary. Instead of covering tracks, if I have installed any backdoors, if I have injected any malicious code, I would try to remove it if I have the rights to do so. Otherwise, I would advise the client that I'm working for, hey, I have injected this malicious code during the testing. It's located here. You have to definitely remove that from your source code, from the web application, right? Cover tracks is more of a process of clearing the mess you caused during the testing process. In some cases, we have to cover tracks when talking about red team engagement, where we have to basically hack a web application, compromise the server, go into the network, elevate our privileges, and do it silently. We don't want ourselves to be discovered, so we need to be cautious about it. That's when you have to cover tracks. Otherwise, you don't really need to think about that pretty much. So yeah, and this is rinse and repeat. To summarize, we begin with enumeration that is split in passive and active phases, where we passively analyze an application, then we proceed to actively play with it, poke around, mess with it. Then we plan our exploitation phase, then we apply it. As ethical hackers, we need to document the whole process. We need to be taking notes of what we did. Those notes are really important because later on we will be writing a report, detailed technical report that will be used by the client to fix their systems. You need to be very specific in your note taking. I'll be showcasing note taking a little bit in this video as well. So let's move on to the next part, which is a little bit more practical. I have chosen to go with, let me just turn on this machine. This is our target. It's a Linux machine. Pretty simple. It's perfect for absolute beginners, in my opinion. You will be finding a link down in the description, so you can download that target machine. It's I have chosen it from VulnHub because it's free and everybody that's watching that video can access it basically. And it's perfect for absolute beginners because it's quite easy. As you can see, I have launched my terminal. This is terminal. I have launched it from here. This is the command line in Linux, as mentioned in our previous video. And as you can see, I'm logged in as root. This is something that I discourage you from doing because you can basically break your system or damage your virtual machine. Not your system like in your computer, but like the operating system, because you can delete an important file or corrupt it because you don't really know what you're doing in the beginning. This is something that I have done in the very beginning of my journey. That said, please use the normal user. I'm pretty sure that those machines are on the same network. You can check your network from here. It's NAT, which is sharing an IP with the host machine, so they're on the same network. If this machine is on bridged and this machine is on NAT, they won't see each other because they're being located in different networks. So make sure that they are both on the same network and they both have an IP. You can see if your interface has been delegated an IP address from here. This is your local IP. Let's find the IP address of our target machine. Since they are on the same network, I can use the ARP scan tool, which is basically scanning the address resolution protocol. So we want to scan the ETH0 interface. Let me just copy this. Oh, no. And then /24 for the subnet. Now we'll wait a little bit and in no time we should see some results. Right. There you have it. This is the IP address of our target machine. It ends on 130. Right, so the first thing that we want to do is enumerate, right? So let's see what open ports do I have on that machine. We're going to use Network Mapper, which is a tool that allows us to see what open ports are there. Oh, sorry. So I'm launching a service scan, then safe scan. I would like it to be verbose so that I can see output from the command in real time. And then I'm setting the speed to a little bit faster. And I would like to output that information into a file called, let's say, target.txt. No, just target. And then we want to insert the IP of our target. All right, so let's run that. We have discovered 3 open ports, port 21, 22 and 80. 21 is a port that is assigned to FTP service, file transfer protocol. There are certain vulnerabilities associated with it usually, like we can usually see it when there is a misconfiguration in the FTP protocol. There is usually anonymous login. We have SSH. If they're weak credentials, we can brute force weak credentials, but we don't really have any usernames. We can guess that, okay, so we see that this is an Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu Linux, so we can guess that there is a root account on that machine, so we can probably try to brute force that account. We're not going to be doing that because we don't really want to waste our time doing that in our video, but I'm just saying that you have that option available for yourself. Then we have a port 80, which is HTTP, and on port 80 HTTP we have a web application being hosted. That web application is being hosted on Apache server. As we can see, we have some available methods. Those are request methods that we can use on that specific application. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to use this basic note-taking software called Mousepad that is coming on Linux. But when I'm studying, when I'm working, I'm using Obsidian, and you can use it yourself. Or Cherry Tree is really good as well, and I think it's coming with in Kali as well. Cherry, yeah, it's in here. But anyways, so okay, we have discovered 3 open ports. Let's see what can we do on FTP. Wait. And 21. Okay, so one thing that I noticed right now is that we have a username called VTC-sec. I'm going to copy this and let's see. I'm going to quit Telnet. Let me see. I can actually do that instead. I don't know why I used Telnet FTP. Okay, so there is an authentication mechanism. So let's try Anonymous as username. Anonymous login, okay, but it requires an email address as your password. Email address as your password. Well, let's say vtcsec at, or no, let's say root at vtcsec, enter, login failed. Yeah, they're brute forcing tools like Hydra and in Metasploit as well, and probably some standalone tools specifically for FTP like Encrack, if I remember correctly. We're not really going to be doing that, but there are some options. Let's see what's happening on port 80. So alright, so we're interested in port 80 because usually port 80 is assigned an HTTP, an encrypted HTTP protocol, and on 443 is the encrypted version of HTTP, which has SSL encryption. So on port 80, we see that we have a web application which says it works. This is the default web application for this server. The web server software is running, but no content has been added yet. Okay, that's weird. So let's see index.php, not found. So usually in a real world engagements, we'll not really see that, but don't take it too seriously. This is a gamified box basically for practicing our skills. So let's use software to brute force or discover directories in that specific web application. We have multiple choices really. We can use Deerbuster, which has graphical user interface, and from here we can paste the URL and basically we can say go faster. Here we can pick a word list, but I will be using GoBuster because I like it better. So GoBuster, there was it there? Yeah. URL. There we insert the IP address. And by the way, now that I remember, let me actually do something just before doing that. So there is a file called hosts file in Linux. It is located in a etc folder, and we're going to go into that file right now. So here from that file we can map IP address to a name. It doesn't matter what the name is. So let me just paste that IP address and I will call that web application VTC-sec, just as the username, just in case, because sometimes the browser doesn't understand what I'm trying to reach out, and it will try to Google that that string instead. So I'll just map that IP address to that domain name, and I'll click Ctrl X to exit. Let's check GoBuster. Yes, I remember correctly. GoBuster dir for directory enumeration. Then I would like to point the directory enumeration to http vtcsec/ and then the word list that I'm going to use is located at user share word lists dirbuster, or yeah, dirbuster, and then directory list 2.3. Let's set, yeah, I think that's okay. And it already found a couple of directories or files. 3 so far. The first one, as you can see, is called files. The second is secret. And the third one is server status. But as you can see, this one is forbidden with the status code 403. This one, however, we can access. Let's see. Okay, it's actually here. Copy link address. Or I can just type in secret or like this. Files. Okay, cool. So if we have an upload functionality in the web application, the uploaded files are going to be located here probably. Not sure, but probably. This is cool because, let's say, well, cool from a hacker's point of view. From the owner's point of view, this is really dangerous because let's say that we have the ability to circumvent upload functionality security controls. And let's say that we upload a reverse shell file, which probably you don't really understand what the reverse shell file is currently right now, but in the future you'll quickly find out. So a reverse shell file or code allows us to create the communication channel between the hosting server of the application and our attacking machine. And then we can communicate and send commands and basically manipulate that server. Anyways, so in order for us to create that channel, if we have an upload functionality, we upload that malicious file, and we need to have the ability to open that malicious file so that we can start that process. That run was because we have access to that specific directory. Let's see what secret holds for us. And secret has some block, I guess. By the way, guys, you can see that on my Firefox I have multiple extensions. Not many, just a couple. The first one is called Wapalizer. Alright, Wapalizer is really cool, neat extension that allows me to understand the build of the web application, like the CMS, the type of the version of the backend, let's say the framework, what programming languages have been used, what rich text editors, etc. Operating system even, not always, but in this case you can clearly see that it says Ubuntu, and it is Ubuntu. Databases, etc. This is really useful information. We can already see some versions of jQuery which are outdated. In a real-world engagement, I would report those software as outdated software, which is quite important for the owner of the application, for him to update or upgrade, because usually those outdated software inherently possess vulnerabilities in certain configurations. So the second extension is Web Tester, really neat. For example, if I want a quick SQL query, there are plenty of those here. XSS, cross-site scripting, local file inclusion, remote file inclusion, again XML inclusion, injection, I mean, server-side request forgery, etc. The last one is probably the most important one. It's called Foxy Proxy. It's something that's not really that necessary because we have the ability to set the proxy from about preferences. If you come here and then type in network, and then from here you can basically set up your HTTP proxy. But in another video I will be doing a standalone video for Burp Suite, because you really need to understand how Burp Suite works and all the functionalities of Burp Suite. So I'm not really gonna go that deep with Burp Suite here. But yeah, I got Foxy Proxy, and those are my basically, that's the very simple configuration: the port, localhost, proxy type. And if I select it, the whole communication goes through that port 8080, where we have Burp Suite listening. Anyways, so we have recent posts. As you can see, I'm currently scanning with my eyes. I'm looking for attack vectors. I don't see really any variables in the URI. Let's see, are there any forbidden characters in this field? What I sometimes do is I type in bunch of symbols, and sometimes if there is a web application firewall, the web application firewall is going to fire up a reaction. Of course, this is not really silent. If you want to be really silent, you have to be really careful. But when we're testing an application, we don't really care sometimes about that. So there is no web application, but if there were, I would eliminate one symbol and then proceed to run that request again. And if it fired again, I would remove another symbol, etc., etc. So a process of elimination until I figure out what symbols are permitted. Anyways, so we have some RSS, which is a vulnerability in itself. It's not a vulnerability, I'm sorry, it's a weakness. So it is a weakness because RSS allows for me to look for information that's not necessarily going to allow me to compromise the server, but it's going to probably allow me to get some type of information. Like, for example, let's say here there is not really a good example, but there is a good chance that some RSS output can contain sensitive data, since there's plenty of options for RSS. So in an engagement, I would advise the owner of the WordPress site to turn off that specific functionality. So it doesn't seem to have a lot of stuff to do right here. Let's run a tool called Nikto, which allows us to basically conduct a little bit of automated testing against the application. It's not really that complex tool, but it saves us some time, and sometimes it shows a lot of useful information. For example, the anti-clickjacking X-frame options is not present, which perhaps means that the web application is vulnerable to clickjacking. That's a really fun vulnerability from a hacker's point of view, because we are able to overlay on our own server, that's complete copy of this server, overlay buttons, and basically whenever a victim clicks on those buttons, malicious code fires up and we can compromise their environment. There's no cross-site scripting protection. We see that we have found some content on the application that's going to be probably interesting. Let's see what else. Some allowed options, methods for HTTP protocol. But of course, this is a WordPress. So what we can do is we can also run a WordPress scanner, a scanner that is designed for WordPress specifically. So most of the platforms have a specific scanner for themselves. If we have a Joomla, I think it was JoomScan, DrupScan for Drupal, and for WordPress it's WPScan, WordPress scan. So WPScan, and here I'm going to copy my API key, which let me just find it. There it is. Right, so I've split my terminal because I would like to see what are my options with WordPress scan. I would like to, so we don't care about usernames, passwords. We care about enumerating, enumerate, O plugins, then O themes and vulnerable plugins. Okay, and then we need to specify the URL, right? With yes URL, and the URL is http vtcsec and then secret, because that's where our WordPress application is located. Okay, let's see now. We already got some results. So as we can see, it enumerated all plugins via passive methods, which is quite nice. We got bunch of versions for different themes. Some themes could contain vulnerabilities, some could be out of date as this one. Those stuff are usually reported to the client. We have discovered one vulnerability. It is a vulnerability identified in WordPress installations that are version lesser or equal to 6.1.1. And it's an unauthenticated blind SSRF via DNS rebinding. This is something that I will be taking note of. And yes, by the way, I already forgot to be taking notes. So let's continue. As far as I see, we have XML-RPC enabled, which could allow us, for example, in WordPress, it could allow us to launch denial of service attacks. It could allow us to enumerate users on the platform or conduct brute forcing attempts against username, password, credentials. So XML-RPC is a really, really sensitive topic when talking about WordPress, because it's something that's sometimes necessary for the platform to run, not always. It's strongly discouraged nowadays, but in the past it used to be really, let's say, essential. But yes, it's inherently vulnerable. So we have a bunch of vulnerabilities now, but is it enough? Did I took note of everything? Enabled RSSs. So those are notes that I'm taking just to show you it's not really necessary. It is important because we can forget things, we can miss out stuff. Sometimes we can get stuck at some stage, and let's say that the answer to our headache is in the very beginning of our enumeration. Let's say this piece of information here, or this piece of information here, and if we don't have it in our note taking, we are going to be really, really frustrated. And usually when we stuck, just go back to your notes, look at what you're missing. Did you try everything? Okay, we have Apache. Do we have any associated vulnerabilities? And talking about associated vulnerabilities, something that we can do is, let's say there is a tool called SearchSploit, which is a tool that extracts data from VulnDB, which is a vulnerable database It's not because the database is vulnerable, but it's because it's a database containing vulnerabilities. So we can, let's say, search exploit Apache, and then what was it, 2418, and there you go. We have a bunch of vulnerabilities associated for Apache, but is it something that's necessary? Is it something that's gonna work with the current application? I doubt. So we have Apache Tomcat, remote directory listing. So when you see those vulnerabilities, you need to understand that they exist in specific configurations. And just because there are plenty of options doesn't mean that our application is vulnerable to that. Okay? For example, we have mod SSL. If it is lesser than this version, then we have a vulnerability called openfuck. Oh, actually openf. No, the vulnerability is really openfuck, but you know. Anyway, I forgot what I was about to do. Yeah. So when we have WordPress, WordPress has default login, and basically, for example, for WordPress there is WP login, which is the login page, the login form for the management panel. We also have WP content, which is empty, but there are certain pre-default paths for WordPress. So it's quite nice if you know about their existence, right? So let's see, VTSec, VTCsec 1, 2, 3. No, not really. I don't know. I just wanted to try something silly. Let's go back and analyze something that we did not do so far. Control U is going to show us the source code of the application. So let's go through the source code real quick, not really analyzing it too deep. Okay, so W content, as you can see, we have themes, some JPEGs, just another WordPress site. It's a secret block, yeah, right. Okay, so far nothing really. We have a post which I'm going to open. Hello world, I'm going to open that as well. We have meta login. So again, WP login, the login place. We have feed, the RSS. We have comments. I will just open those. Come on. Okay, there you go. Let's see, anything else? A bunch of gibberish. Okay, let's. I'm gonna close that. What's that? So that's index.php feed. Something interesting? No, not really so far. We have the version, but we already got it from WordPress, the WordPress scanner. Something interesting though, I can see that there is a comment in hello world, and the creator of that comment is admin. So we have a username, and the username is admin. And as I already mentioned, I know that this is the way in, because I've come prepared. But usually what I did try is basically I tried to exploit through XML-RPC. I tried to exploit the machine through that vulnerability, through the unauthenticated blind server-side request forgery, and with DNS rebinding, but it's not really, doesn't make sense to use that vulnerability, because it's It's a vulnerability that allows you to attack other machines on the same network, and we are specifically targeting that specific machine. It's not really applicable, even though it's vulnerable. I did not try to brute force FTP, and I did not try to brute force SSH. What I did try after understanding better about that vulnerability and about XML-RPC, I of course try to brute force my way into the management panel. So let's turn on Metasploit with MSF console. No, it wasn't. Now I remember. So there are multiple ways we can actually brute force WordPress. Okay, we can also use MSF console module. But I remember that I wanted to showcase Burp Suite in a very quick way. I don't want to go in depth. As you can see, you have a lot of functionalities. Not just that, but we also have extender. And if we go to the store, those are all the functionalities that could extend the possibilities for that specific software. We can do so much more with it. All right, so one video is not really enough, and that's not going to be the time. I'm going to be going deep with Burp Suite. So I'm going to go to Firefox. I will go to the login page. All right, I will turn on my proxy. Now the whole traffic is going through the proxy on port 8080. Why? Because if I go to proxy options and you see proxy listeners, and you can see that the listener for incoming traffic of Burp Suite is on localhost port 8080. Okay, so let's go to intercept. Now intercept is off. When intercept is off, all the traffic that's coming and going is going to be transferred to HTTP history. But I would like to intercept the following request. I'm going to create a request where I'm going to basically try to log in. The moment I clicked, Burp Suite displayed the request as it was intercepted. For username with the variable log is admin, and then password. So I'd like to catch this and send it to the intruder. Now there are two ways of doing that. I can right click and send it to intruder, or I can click or press Control I. With Control Shift I, I'll go to that specific place. Now I will mark that field because that's the place where we want to insert our payloads. What do I mean by payload? A payload from here is basically the password that we want to try out with that specific username. I'm going to click load, and then I will use the word list called fast track. You can use RockU. It's not really something that I would advise because it's really big. It might crash Burp Suite, but fast track is a small playlist and it's just enough. So it contains plenty of passwords, as you can see. It's a good word list. That's the word list I'm going to use. We don't need to change anything else really. I'll go to the resource pool and I'll create a new one because that's a little bit heavy. 10 concurrent requests. I'll make it maximum concurrent requests of 3 and 1 second of delay between requests. Okay, I'm going to start that attack now. Let me just see positions. Yes, start attack. And now the attack is going. As you can see, we have multiple requests. When I click on a request, we can see that the status is 200, which is okay. As you can see, status okay. From that, we don't really understand if we have logged in successfully or not, because the status is okay. Usually the status is different, like I actually forgot, but let's say forbidden. And in such cases, when the authorization returns a status 200 response, we should be looking at the length of the message, because if we log in with a successful password, the length of the response is going to be different. So I'm going to sort the length by clicking on it. And if there is any successful attempt, it will be visualized on the very top. That shouldn't take that long. Any moment now. Oh, we actually even got a different status, which is 302, which stands for found. And in this case, there is a redirection, and this is found. And so we try to log in with admin. Of course, this is a critical vulnerability in itself, because the credentials are insanely weak. So anybody with a little bit of experience would try admin password or admin password 123 with of course, to make it a little bit more secure, you know. So let's see what we can do. There are plenty of ways to approach. Let me just turn off the intercept so that the request can go through. Admin. So this is how a WordPress management panel looks like. We have posts, media, pages. There are many ways we can approach that that step. The next step of our process is basically compromising the system somehow. What can we do? We can upload an image and then use that image to spawn a backdoor web shell. We can create from the editor a backdoor in the 404 template, or any template for that matter. By injecting code, we can create a payload with MSF Venom. And that payload could be injected like so, like Meterpreter, reverse TCP, the local host, the listening host is my own IP, and the listening port is whatever I set it to be, in this case 1234, and then I would like it to be raw, because that's what we need. So we wait a little bit to generate our payload with MSF Venom. And now this is the payload. The size is 1100 bytes. We copy that payload from here, because otherwise this is basically a comment. So we copy this payload and we can insert it in the template. However, there is much easier way, okay? Because after we set up all that, then we need to create a listener with netcat and VOP with port 1234, and then we catch the connection, and then we make the shells a little bit more stable. This is going to be really confusing to most of you right now. Let's make it a little bit more straightforward. We have username, we have password. Isn't there shortcut? Yes, there is. With MSF console, we can also execute commands from the command line instead of waiting for it to load and then doing whatever. So we can search for WordPress admin, which is a module in MSF console. We're going to tell the console to use that module. Then we are going to set the R hosts to the IP address 68.21.18.130 to the IP address of the target, because that's the remote host, or in other words, the target. We're going to set the password, the username. Username is admin. Set password admin, and then we know that the specific WordPress web application is hosted in secret location, so we need to specify that, otherwise that module is not going to find it. So the target URI is secret, and I believe that's it. Let's see if that's gonna work. Right, I forgot to run exploit, but now that I did that, and there we have it. We got Meterpreter session 1 opened. We have a connection that is outgoing because we connected essentially to a backdoor that was placed we installed a plugin. That plugin is called .gibberish.php, and that plugin is listening for incoming connections, and then we created a session because we connected to that backdoor on port 46006. Okay, now we can check we can check a little bit the information about the system. So the Meterpreter is kind of a shell. How to explain it exactly? Let me type in help. So you see all those commands. Those commands are basically commands that are hard-coded in the software called Meterpreter. That software is going to run those commands and essentially do something and interact with an active session. We can either use the Meterpreter to for example, upload files, something that I'll be doing in a bit. We can download files from the compromised machine. We can do, as you can see, system commands and much more. We can invoke modules and scripts, but that's a little bit advanced. In order to interact with the session, we just type in shell. And now we are currently connected to the very machine. All the commands typed in here are going to be typed in on the compromised machine. And for some reason, okay, there we go. So in our previous video, I was telling you about how when you compromise a machine, you wouldn't be seeing, for example, who you are logged in as, or you wouldn't be seeing where you are located currently, and all that information is going to be unknown to you. As you can see, this is exactly what I mean. So I typed in print working directory, nothing showed up because I was somewhere, and somewhere apparently nowhere. And let's see, as who am I? I am logged in as an unprivileged user, www.data. Let's go to temp, and what I would like to do is I'm going to background this session with Ctrl Z. Background this channel, yes. What I want to do is, let me see. I'm going to locate a script which I have prepared. The script is called Linux exploit suggester, a script that is going to suggest ourselves possible exploits that we can apply in our current compromised environment. So I'm going to upload from root Linux Linux. Oh, Lin. There we go. By the way, I'm tapping the tap button that's why those options show up. Sometimes I don't know where exactly I'm at. So upload that file, uploading, operation failed, core channel open. Perhaps if I go to temp and then do that up. Okay, so that core channel open operation failed happened because you don't have privileges to upload file in the directory where I was located at. So I went to temporary, where you usually everybody has the ability to use that directory. So I'll go to shell again and interact with the session. I'll change the mode of the file and make it executable. linx suggesture.sh, and then I'll run that script. I'm tired of writing it. Let me just copy paste. Let me close that down, make it bigger. And we already have plenty of options, but as you can see, the exposure is less probable. And since there is less probable, let's see if there is something more probable or better than that at least. So as we can see, we have even highlighted something that is for Ubuntu. And we know that that machine is Ubuntu from our initial research. As you can see, Ubuntu machine. So I have downloaded myself that specific, I have downloaded the Pound kit, which is located in, it's not located here, but it download URL from here, GitHub. So, okay, let me background that again and upload the necessary files from exploit, from that exploit. CVE, by the way, CVE is something that you'll be seeing a lot, right? And some of you are going to wonder, what is this CVE? That is a format for registering vulnerabilities. It's a CVE format. You can see that there is a year, and let me just transfer this. Sage. Oh wait, I missed. Downloads. Exploit. Okay, that worked. And the last thing that I have to do is upload Pound kit. Now that I have that, all I have to do is go back to the shell and again make that specific script that I've uploaded executable by changing the mode to executable, CVE. And now all I have to do is just run it. Now the magic is going to happen. Some background processes that we don't really understand and see. Perhaps what's happening at the background, this software, which is coded in C++, is going to be converted, and then the Pound kit as well, and then they're going to be executed. And yeah, oh, actually it's printed out. So yeah, GCC, exactly that. And who am I? Root. There we have it. We even have the password for Marlin Spike. So that was a long video. Hopefully most of you found it interesting. I tried to gather a lot of information. Trust me, in that specific video we've covered information that should be spread across a couple of videos My advice to you is like, don't be scared of the amount of information that you need to know, that you need to learn. I know that everything that you saw so far is new to you, and it's scary. It can be scary, at least. Don't give up. You get used to seeing and using those softwares. You get used to using the terminal. Everything is about putting in the time. And be patient. Be patient. Keep that fire burning. And don't give up, you know? So I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it, subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions or queries, you can post them below in the comment section, where I'll be quite active and will try to help you out. And with that said, thank you for watching and see you in our next video.